Welcome back to Just Another Solar Podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me. Karl Jensen. G'day, Karl.
Luke, how are you?
Good, thank you. What's going on in Melbourne?
Well, nothing's changed since the last fortnight. It's still cold. I think we hit 2 degrees this morning.
And Jess MacPherson. G'day, Jess.
Hey, mate. How's it going? The sun's come back out here in Adelaide. It's all full steam ahead.
And industry legend Nigel Morris. G'day, Nige.
G'day. Sorry, we're all faffing around in the background with our flash new AI-driven cameras, which use hand controls to zoom in and out. So I keep, I'm looking up Karl's nostrils at the moment. You're looking good, buddy.
A bit of a trim done.
Well, the beautiful thing is the listeners will get to watch you playing with your cameras on YouTube. And last week, Jess, I saw you in Adelaide for the Smart Energy SA conference, which that was actually a bit of a cracker too. It's the first one they've had. It was a great turnout and really good people there. And I got to see you speak on one of the panels, which was cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, up there with the big dogs. And it was a really good show and really good people, really great conversations. And I don't know, if little old Adelaide, you didn't know exactly what to expect, but there was a good turnout, I felt. I don't know what I was comparing against, but yeah, it was a good show.
And just seeing how far ahead of the world South Australia is. So some of the figures there, what South Australia's done. So they led the way with solar rooftop penetration in the first instance, first movers on flexible controls. And then with the batteries as well, they're leading the way, which we'll get into later with the guest.
Right.
But I was really impressed with that. And I also had the opportunity to do a tour of the Tindo factory. So when we had Glenn Morelli on the podcast, he gave us an invite, so turned up to Tindo with a couple of others, and Glenn himself gave us a grand tour of their line. And I'm going to say it's super impressive, very advanced. And I also went to a company that's running 3 PCB lines and doing a lot of advanced manufacturing. And it blew the top of my head off how advanced Adelaide is in manufacturing, in installing solar and batteries, and technically. So what a place, Jess.
And
yeah, we got
churches
a lot going on
too,
there.
right? City of churches, let's not forget.
Yeah, and the city of festivals or whatever, we get that little moniker as well.
The festival city, that's right.
Yeah, yep. But I don't know, I agree. I think I'm super blessed. I get to learn from the best people in the industry, and I get to do it in the best place in the world for it, I reckon. So yeah, couldn't ask for more.
And some of the other news that's been out there, Jess, there's a new player in the solar space.
Yeah, Bunnings are giving it a crack. Apparently they didn't see what's happened out there for the others who've given it a similar crack. So, I mean, most people have probably seen the stories. It made the rounds on cut-ins, and so I think they're going by Zalora or something along those lines. New South Wales exclusive, and, you sort of rent to buy packages. Alarmingly small to pretty average is the XXL was like 13 kilowatts or something, as you'd probably expect. But a lot of people had a bit of a kick up with the mention of SIG Energy as the battery brand, at least in the announcement and the Solar Quotes article about it. Will did have a response on the SIG page that I found pretty reasonable. Where he basically said, look, it's got nothing to do with us. If somebody's going to buy our product and use it in this kind of way, that's up to them. But, it's third party. It's not about us. So yeah, but interesting movement.
Seems as much about the finance offering and also $0 up front. I wouldn't say they're cheap systems though. Whether they're perfectly sized or cheap, I'm not sure what they're going to do. It seems like quite a complex offering versus what they could be offering.
I guess that they hope people will pay for convenience. But yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, compared to some of the scary TV ads you're seeing, the systems are a lot more pricey. They're paying over time, so they're paying for the, there's no such thing as free money, right? So they're paying for that in there as well. A lot of people rightly raised, who's going to install these and who's going to support it. Somebody's battery doesn't seem to be working, or somebody's inverters having a fit. Are you going to call Bunnings about that? No, it doesn't really feel like that's how
I have to say, though, they've got really good returns policies. You can turn up with something broken. You barely need a receipt. They'll just grab it. Go and grab another one. No worries. Oh, we don't have it in stock. I'll give you a credit.
Yeah.
It's about the easiest refunds you can get at Bunnings. So.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I thought the pricing was really cheap and competitive, like the products that they're offering.
Did you?
I reckon if you take 10 grand out of your mortgage, it's worth $17,000 over a decade versus it getting compound interest in your mortgage. So if you math that out, it's $130 a month. It's the same. So I don't see where people saying it's expensive or it's cheap. They're just not doing the maths on their own systems properly. That's what it costs.
Potentially, I think very importantly, like, the principle of you're spending the money anyway, right? Giving it your retailer is an important tool. But if it's in exchange for maybe less than good quality products, and especially that aren't installed properly and therefore will just never do what they should, then I think it's a wasted opportunity. This rebate should be allowing people to get really good quality kit installed by good quality people because it's subsidized. That's the whole point. Well, it should be.
I'd say the industry's doing that anyway, Jess.
But is Bunnings doing that? That's the...
What's the difference? Bunnings versus the bloke down the road selling 50 kilowatt hours for $5,000. Who cares?
My initial reaction was, okay, so Bunnings with this offer. Prior to this, I think the last one that sort of caused a kerfuffle was IKEA. Okay. Prior to that, we had Costco. Prior to that, we had the retailers, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of others. And going back, 20 years, guess what? Bunnings offering solar. Hot water, particularly. They did a ton of chromogens. Remember that? I think it's really interesting to see the big box retailer push into the space, and they're having a different crack at it with a pay-as-you-go kind of deal. I think that's really interesting. But, if we look back at history, it will be remarkable if they are successful based on history.
But if Wes farmers are determined to make something work, history has shown that they will find a way to make it work too.
Very
in
true.
my opinion, this may be more disruptive than what everyone's given it credit. There's a lot of dismissive people saying IKEA didn't work and so-and-so didn't work, whereas they have been watching this market for a long time. They've had a little bit of a play in it, so they partnered
EV
with
chargers,
Tesla
right?
at one point. No, not just the EV chargers. You could buy a Powerwall 3 from Bunnings online. It was basically a lead gen. You put your details in, goes to one of the Tesla network.
Yeah, we were in that network. Not that we got a crazy amount of influx through it compared to like your normal Tesla leads, but yeah.
But it seemed to be organic though. They weren't out there actively promoting with TV ads, radio ads and all that sort of thing. So I think that they've got a lot of muscle, and if they decide to flex that muscle and they get the offering right, there's still a place for great service providers all around the country. Don't get me wrong. Complex product that needs to be installed well.
Our guest who we'll bring on soon may know the answer to this, but I wouldn't mind betting that putting aside perhaps Telstra and one or two other large communications players, putting them aside, I wouldn't mind betting that Bunnings potentially have one of the largest installed solar fleets on their buildings too, and have done a stunning job, in fact, at deploying solar on literally hundreds and hundreds of epic big commercial projects, including storage, including advanced monitoring, including advanced control in some places for a whole variety of corporate reasons. And you have to hand it to they're not just dipping a toe in here.
Our guest today, he's been on this show the most out of any of our guests. So I think it's number 3. Warwick Johnston from SunWiz is a go-to guy for solar and battery market data in Australia and also pushing internationally. And if you've seen any chart floating around LinkedIn lately, there's a good chance he made it, or the information or the data came from Warwick. He really is the source, otherwise known as the Woracle. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Luke, good to be here on with this video production. Not just another solar podcast. Pretty special.
There you go. So Warwick, the Cheaper Home Batteries program finally started on the 1st of July. There's been so many dramas and fanfare and anticipation, and you actually have the data of what it looks like in that first month. So do you want to give us a couple of the headliners just to get us going?
Yeah, we just cracked 20,000 systems registered in the STC registry today. And it was ramping up from not much at the start as people kind of figured out their paperwork and were focused on installation, to the point where we're regularly hitting over 1,000 installations registered per weekday. And when you consider the average capacity of each of those installations is above 17 kilowatt hours, then we're talking about, I can't remember what was it. I had a figure, but
340 something megawatt hours,
which is insane when you look at, last year, the entire year was 800 odd, right? So, and somebody else looked at how big Hornsdale was, and it took 100 days, etc. Geez, look what we've been able to achieve in a
Many
very, very
hands.
short time just by getting everyone involved.
Some of your data that stood out to me is that in the first week of the program, there were more batteries installed than what there were in the first 2 months of last year. And there's some other figures. So last year, I think it was approximately 72,000 battery systems were installed. After the first month, we're at about 20,000. So what's your forecast for the year?
Look, it's quite easy to imagine that for the coming 12 months, we continue on at this rate of about 20,000 installations a month. They could certainly go higher than that, but that would get us to 220, 240,000 installations in a 12-month period. Now, 2025 itself, we're going to only have half a year crack at it, but we're certainly going to be blowing any previous year right out of the water.
And we talked about this before, but those statistics, they're going off of the STC registrations. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So last year's data would only be batteries that were attached at the same time as the solar system, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, it's a bit different. So we do an annual research paper prior to the existence of STCs for batteries. That was the way we had to do it. So we interviewed all the manufacturers, we interviewed key distributors, etc., and triangulate lots and lots of different data points to arrive at what was the only reasonable figure in the absence of anything else, because most of the other data points didn't reveal the full picture. Now that we've got STCs, now we've got STCs, we'll have a very clear picture of how much is actually going in, and as well as a treasure trove of other information that we can provide you on system sizing and how it's changing each month, who are the top brands, who are the top retailers, all sorts of things.
Well, we should break that down. So let's start with system size. Can you give us some history on what average battery sizes have been up to this point and the trend that we've seen under the program?
Yeah, so historically, for the last number of years, it's been somewhere between 10 kilowatt hours and 12 kilowatt hours has been the average installation, influenced by whatever state government policy was driving things at the time. And what we've seen now within this month's data, but even as the sales and proposals was starting to flow through, you could see that rapidly rising. And so last month, the average was 17 kilowatt hours per installation, thereabouts. And you really get to, I know, it's great, isn't it? What's interesting about that, a couple of things. One is there's some economies of scale that apply. So a 17 kilowatt hour battery is proportionally cheaper per kilowatt hour than a 10 kilowatt hour battery. So you're really getting some multiplier effect from that subsidy. And not to mention, some people, of course, will see this as I get to save some money off the battery I would have otherwise bought. But when you get one chance at this subsidy, most people go and say, well, let's spend what I would have spent before, but just get a 50% bigger battery.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
that's what we're seeing reflected in the average too.
We saw your bar chart today. One of the team sent it through to me to have a look at. And it seems that 10 and 15 kilowatt hours is the dominant size. And then obviously you've got a spread of larger batteries, which bumps the average up. My sort of takeaway from that is there should be a 13.5 kilowatt hour bar in that chart, because we know that Tesla's 13.5 kilowatt hours, and they'd be able to give us a good indication of, what proportion of the market. I don't know what you're fitting those into, the 10 kilowatt hour group or the 15 kilowatt hour group, or half in each one. Obviously, it doesn't account for all sizes, but it was curious that I think the industry is still doing a good job of selling reasonably sized batteries in that 10 and 15 kilowatt hour category, which are really all most people are going to need.
Yeah, and look, yes, 13 kilowatt hours is the most popular category there. 45 megawatt hours of the total was in that range. And, Tesla does do very well as a share of that. It's about half of that volume. But where Tesla's missing out is the second most popular is 19 kilowatt hours, third most popular is 9 kilowatt hours, then you got 15 kilowatt hours, 23 and 17. So there's a whole range of different sizes that are already emerging as very popular, that the monolithic batteries like Tesla's aren't well positioned to take advantage of. And so that's where you're seeing some of those stackable batteries.
And when you mention those numbers, it also correlates with some of the key brands that show up in the SunWiz data. So the Tesla number being around that 13, I think of a certain stack of BYDs that goes with Fronius, very common configuration. So last year, according to SunWiz data, the top batteries were Sungrow, Alpha ESS, and Goodwee. And I'm curious to see how that product mix has changed, and we'll get on to SIG a little bit more in depth. But more generally, before we speak about SIG Energy, how have you seen that mix of manufacturers change in the last 6 to 12 months?
That's right. So you mentioned Sungrow was number one, Alpha ESS was number two, and these were based off verification process we went through, and Goodwee was in the top 5. What we've seen in general is that there's been insurgents that have displaced the incumbents, and you've mentioned one that had a big impact, but all parties are being assailed from smaller players. And so you see the rise of batteries which used to have a couple of % market share to be nudging the 5% market share, and quite a few of those. And yes, Tesla's been one of the big brands that have really been affected by this maturation of the industry and now the gold rush that's on. But all of those incumbents are in a defensive position trying to hold on to their market share.
Yeah, I went through the CEC battery list the other day to look at the number of brands and number of models that are in the list. And my goodness, I think from memory it was 100 and something brands, and might have been 400 models, all the different configurations of all those different brands. There was a bit of crossover, of course, but literally hundreds of brands. And my week has been full of chatting to people going, we're deploying this battery, this brand. Are you integrated with that? And it's like, hang on, have I heard of that brand? No, don't know that brand so much. I think I've heard of them, but we're selling thousands. Just go, wow. It's really, really changing out there. And that erosion of market share as everyone takes advantage of this opportunity is going to be really interesting to watch over the next, particularly 3 to 6 months while it's red hot, I think. Do you have any sense can you tell from the data that you've got access to what the trend is like in terms of, for example, AC coupled and DC coupled?
We can certainly see that hybrid inverters are taking a massive share of those battery systems, but they're also taking an increasing share of PV-only systems. So I think that even amongst those, it's about 20% of installations of PV systems are using hybrid inverters. So the good thing about those is that they're battery ready. So a lot of companies can come back to those installations, and that's been a trend which has been coming over the years. Even though we've got a lot of retrofit batteries, we're still seeing a good chunk of those installations being using hybrid inverters.
Well, we like that idea, Woracle, and I'm guessing that a lot of those are being sold without batteries right now because people can't get the batteries. I'm hearing that out there in the market quite a bit. Went to see a customer the other day and they said, have you got stock? Have you got stock? And I said, yeah, we've got stock. And he says, I'm going to need a discount. It doesn't work like that.
Do you think that's what's driving people towards these like no-name brands? It's just if you can get it, that's more valuable than...
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I would agree.
Doubt. Yeah, if you haven't got anything for the boys to do, you haven't got anything for the boys to do. So you find something else. Same things always happened with panels and inverters in the past. So batteries,
Hunt for batteries. Yeah, hunt for batteries. Yeah, I agree. And I saw one on Facebook today, which was literally someone. I saw multiple posts, in fact, of people saying, I'm after a X brand. I need 6 modules of this brand. If anybody knows where I can get them. So clearly they've set themselves up for a sale. Weren't able to get the stock that they hoped to be able to close that sale. And there were multiple posts like that. So, and this was a big name brand. So the supply and demand challenge that we talked about last week is really kicking in, and that's helping some of those other brands come up.
And we've seen this plenty of times, right, Nigel, in the solar industry. This is the moment where those new brands insert themselves, because that's what people will take whatever they can, and then people become more familiar with them and then more comfortable with them. Of course, there's also the flip side of that experience, and you guys have mentioned, of course, batteries require more support for your customers as well. So I think we're seeing a bit of, it's quite hectic out there, people madly scrambling to do whatever they can. It will settle down again. Case in point there, I think, is we've seen a huge amount of retrofit batteries, more so than usual in this first month. And I expect that's because a lot of people have been fielding incoming calls from their old solar customers. And there'll be a time that will start to peter out, and you'll have to then go out and engage with sales and not just be taking orders. And at that point in time, we'll switch back to a bit more of, okay, let's put some solar up along with your storage, or a new solar and storage system, accounting for whatever's going on your roof.
So do you think that we've reached peak number of installs then, and it's going to peter out from there, or do you think it's going to increase and then drop off? What's your prediction?
There's still, there's backlog of installations that were mostly completed that are starting to flow through certificates. So in some way, we're balancing like the registry kind of process ramping up with all those installations which took place some time ago. So I think we've got more growth to come, but it will settle back to about this level after we've gotten through this initial rush. That said, there's going to be, the product constraints are one of the bottlenecks. Installers constraints are another one. So it's going to be pretty dynamic.
Do you think that the statistics are going to be terribly skewed by all of the catch-up from the pre-July 1st installations? In the sense you mentioned earlier, like the 2025 got half a year, but it's not really half a year because people are probably going from, April-ish onwards worth of installations. And then, you'd kind of hope that people are ramping up in a sense with the demand. What do you think are the trends there?
The key is that we have some insight into what's coming through the pipeline through our data partnerships. We get to see what's happening. The STC registry is the last thing that occurs. Before that, there's a system sales and finance is involved, etc. And each of those can show us the attachment rate ratio of batteries to PV installations. And so that attachment rate has been more than one, more batteries being proposed, sold and financed than there have been PV systems for a few months now. So that we're seeing in the STC registry now, more battery systems than PV, I expect to continue for a few months. So the short answer is, we're going to continue to have healthy adoption rates, even as we're getting through that backlog of pre-installed systems. There's still a lot more coming through the sales pipeline and highly elevated rates of registration to follow.
So the question that I had, if I go to claim STCs on a new system, I need to have a new lot of hardware. So if I go and install a hybrid inverter that's AC coupled, 10 kilowatt hours, and then I go back 6 months later because the customer says, hey, my array's not big enough to feed this thing. Do you think I'm going to be able to get away with claiming the STCs because I haven't claimed any STCs on that inverter for panel before? Or am I buggered because now it's a second-hand inverter and it's not a new system?
So I don't know exactly, Karl, but already the STC registry allows for system upgrades, whether they be replacement or extension or addition. You can add panels to an existing inverter already under the framework, or you can be putting a separate inverter alongside. So I imagine that you could come back and add panels at later date.
That's
and
awesome.
I think that's probably going to be a good thing to do because at the moment, people are just going like, we'll just chuck a battery on because that's what you want right now. And let's come back and look at it another time when we're not running around like headless chickens to figure out what the best thing to do is now to put more energy into that battery because, as you pointed out in previous podcasts, they might have bought more than a bit of more than they could chew with their energy storage, and now they need a bigger array to fill it.
Indeed. We saw it today. A customer said, I want a 30 kilowatt hour battery for my 5 kilowatt inverter. And I said, look, It's only got 6.6 kilowatts of panels on it. You just got no chance of filling that thing. Really need to have a holistic look at this want and desire that you have and actually fit something that's going to work properly rather than sell you what you want.
I think on the back of that, the demand is also half the battle too. I've had a fair few customers who said, I want a 20 kilowatt hour battery. And, maybe they've got a 13 and a bit kilowatt array. They're fine to charge that. But you look at their data and you say, mate, you barely use 5 kilowatt hours a day from the grid. If you promise me black and blue that you're going to use more power, we can do this. But I'm not going to sleep at night because you're going to take your 5 kilowatt hours out of the battery. You're going to have 30 more to pump into it the next day. And you're still going to be upset about selling it into the grid for 2 cents. We're not solving a problem here.
So that's what Brad Filletta brought up. He said the issue of just having one bite at it means that people are going to be in that position where the fear of missing out or undersizing the system, that they're going to pull the trigger at a higher point to allow for the future as well.
Well, you've been in my summer battery, Luke. My spa. My summer battery soaks up a shitload of power.
That's how you got Luke to take his shirt off and get in your hot tub. I understand.
Look,
noted.
Yeah, but it is safe for the podcast because it's only Luke that's been in that spa with Karl. I know I haven't. I don't think you have, Jess.
No,
I don't think Warwick has.
Invitations open, Nigel. No worries.
Warwick maybe had.
No chance.
Just Nigel, next time you go into Melbourne, Nigel, pack your Speedos and head on over.
The good news is, Nigel, I'm too tight to pay for chemicals, so I typically fill it up with hot water from the heat pumps, use it, and then drain it out on the lawn.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're a gem.
There you go. Now, Warwick, SunWiz also tracks the pricing of systems, both solar and batteries. And I'm curious, have you noticed any trends upwards or downwards since the Cheaper Home Batteries program started?
Yeah, look, there's been an increase in overall spend. People are buying bigger batteries. And when I say overall spend, I'm talking about the amount that the retailer gets. And at the same time, the price per kilowatt hour has gone down. And that's because people are applying that economies of scale. They're getting a bit bigger battery. It has a lower dollars per kilowatt hour price. So, yeah, retailers are certainly getting more money from batteries and consumers are getting more economic outcomes, which is a good thing. The spend on solar and battery systems has been fairly steady. And so that tends to suggest, at least initially, that people are probably preferring to spend more on a battery and less on their solar system. At this point in time. So that had some implications for people selling panels, people selling regular string inverters. Their market's actually a bit depressed at the moment by this initial surge, at least, of battery installations.
Well, we kind of predicted that, right? So we said, hey, look, if I can make $2,000 out of screwing a battery to your wall in 2 hours, or I can make $2,000 out of 2 guys crawling all over your roof for a day, then I'm going to choose to sell people batteries because I can get $5,000 or 10 grand out of my teams for the day instead of 2.
I think there'll become a point, I hear what you're saying, though, where the savvy retailers will be looking at this as a bigger play and going not just, how many batteries can I go through at once, but delivering those outcomes for their customers in the long term. Okay, well, how can I maximize my sale price on this? Right now, we're in a situation where there's much more demand than our ability to supply, in effect. But when that balances out, then I think they'll get back to a bit more, okay, let's take the time to deal with this customer and figure out what the best thing is. And so there'll be a balance of people jumping on roofs and in garages.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. SIG Energy. It's been the big buzz product. They've been online claiming their market share, and anecdotally, a lot of people are quoting it and installing it. What do the numbers say, Warwick?
So, yes, the numbers say that as far as proposals and sales goes, SIG is doing far better than most other brands, and they've taken a huge chunk of market share on that basis. Now, a lot of those proposals and sales have taken a chunk of time to flow through into installation. So there were some people questioning how accurate that information is. And because they hadn't necessarily seen it in their books yet, that's starting to be felt. So our market share information takes a blend, as I mentioned previously, of proposals and sales from our data partners, from finance data and from STC data, and actually another couple of data sources there. And blends it all together. So it's a bit of a blend of what's about to happen and what has happened. So SIG Energy, we see certainly dominating, particularly in those proposals and sales. And that said, some of their dominance started to plateau now that they've been assailed by those new upstarts trying to wedge their toes into the market.
I was about to say you did a remarkable job there of cajoling together all these different, talking about how you cajole together all these different data points to come up with a sophisticated guess, which I recall very acutely from sitting in the Poinciana Cafe with you all those years ago going, we can figure this out.
Were you guys in a spa or?
Wait. It would have been an organic steam room at the Poinciana Cafe in Mullumbimby, Jess, just so you know. But no, but it is a really tricky thing to triangulate this data. But for those skeptics out there, having seen Warwick doing this for 10 years, I just want to actually shout out about how well tested your methods are, mate. And for anyone who's got doubts about the Woracle, don't never doubt the Woracle, I say.
But he also didn't give us a percentage figure.
Well, subscribers get to see that. Let's face that. But
yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I wanted to know how much money was involved. How much money are people spending? What's the capital cost that the average punter is spending now? Has that changed from $6,000 for a 6.6 to bloody 20,000? Is that do you got a sense of what the average punter is actually throwing on the table?
You put me on the spot. I don't have that answer for you at hand, Nige, but rest assured it's in the platform. You can see the total spend that people are doing and how that's trending over time, PV and storage, etc.
Yeah, we saw some data that I think we talked about in the last episode that was posted on Facebook. MEEH, as usual, posted, I think someone had done a survey of 40 different battery systems. And I was asked this on I got invited to a round table with the guy from the United Nations earlier this week. That was a nice way to start the week. Stephen Steele, I think it was, who was in executive deputy general something or other at the United Nations. Powerful guy. Amazing.
I beg your pardon, Nige. Were there any speedos or spas involved or steam rooms?
No, but we're all in massage chairs, so it was okay. No, it was a good day. But he asked that question actually because he's talking about Australia in the global context, and the question was put to me actually, what's the average price that we're seeing out there? From what I'm seeing, it was like I think I quoted $750 a megawatt hour off the top of my head. A kilowatt hour. That's kind of that mid range. I would think there's some that are clearly cheaper, and there are some that are higher. But I would have thought it would have been about that range. What do you think, Karl? You're out there.
I think 10 grand. I'll just put it out there. 10 grand. Talk to a lot of customers that have put quite expensive proposals in front of people. They say, the customer wanted to maximise their rebate, so we quoted them for 40 kilowatts, 50 kilowatt hours, this sort of stuff, and we didn't get any sales. And I said, well, that's because there's still a cost of living crisis out there. They had a number in their head, and you just completely blew it out of the water and told them it was going to cost $30,000, and they said, get out. That's bullshit. Can't afford it. And I did think there would be a reduction in the number of heat pumps that we sell because people would be spending money on a battery instead of doing their other electrification activities. As it turns out, a lot of my solar customers have done really well selling heat pumps because customer comes in thinking that they're going to spend $5,000 on a battery. Solar retailers says, mate, there's no such thing. You need to spend 10 grand. And they go, I don't have 10 grand. So old mate says, hey, quick, you should get a heat pump. Which is great. That hasn't completely massacred that market for other electrification activities.
Interesting.
I've got some data for you. Just pulled it up there. In the most recent quarter, the median price spent, this is pre-subsidy, is 16 grand for a battery-only system, and that's increased from 15 grand, where it was about a year ago. Spending more. But not as much.
But that's retrofit only, is that right?
That's retrofit only.
And that's also before STCs.
That's before STCs, yeah.
Now, also going on with the data, South Australia is a bit of an outlier, or they're actually leading the way.
Yeah, baby.
Their storage, we mentioned this earlier, Jess, what an amazing place, but their storage to solar ratios are well ahead of the rest of the country. So that means there's more battery being installed compared to the solar. Can you speak to those numbers and also let the other states know what they can do to improve theirs?
Yeah, so New South Wales installed more batteries and more battery capacity than anyone else. They got 38% of the market, but South Australia beat Victoria and got 15% of capacity installed in the first month of the scheme. Now, when we look at the ratio of battery to PV systems across that first month, noting there's a ramp up of batteries, it was 0.9, or let's say call it 90 batteries for every 100 PV systems nationally. But South Australia blitzed it and did 150 battery installations for every 100 PV installations.
Yeah.
Jess, that's you.
Everyone's already got
That's
solar.
you, Jess. That's just all your numbers. That's your commission.
Yeah, that's
for the
me
month,
personally.
right?
Hang on,
Yeah.
so there's another
Hang on
factor
a
at
minute.
play
So
here.
there's another factor at play here. If we look at the economics in the different states with different prices of energy, then it makes a lot of sense to do it in South Australia and Western Australia. It completely sucks to do it in the ACT, and Victoria sucks as well. So the rates that people have to pay for energy during peak times obviously impact the financial feasibility of buying a battery.
Yeah, like the ROIs were already really good before this subsidy. Like, getting a 7 or 8 year ROI on battery before the battery subsidy was very achievable. When you're buying your power in for 45 to 50 cents, and you're selling it for 2 or 3, which is pretty standard here in SA. Just to round us out, about $1.05-ish a day for your daily supply charge is pretty average here. The numbers were already good. So then with this subsidy on top, now people's ROIs are closer to 4 or 5 years very easily. It's a
I want to see
no-brainer.
that.
Yeah, well,
I want to see it,
easy.
Jess.
Easy, mate.
Not easy at all.
Yeah.
That's so good. And speaking of WA, can I ask what's going on in WA? Because, Warwick, from your perspective, because WA has been a bit of a challenge for the guys on the ground over there. There's been some fits and spurts. And how are the battery numbers in WA?
7% of the capacity registered in the nation last month was in WA, so it's actually not that fantastic. And as an attachment ratio,
is that proportional to population level though?
You tell me.
So there's 7% of all battery capacity in the country went into WA, so that's probably not too bad given the population over there.
Not so good on a land mass ratio though, Nigel.
No, and very high solar penetration over there too, right? But generally speaking, weird place, strange rules don't get the people. But overall, they're lovely. Don't get me wrong. We love.
How you feeling, Luke?
Thanks, Nigel. I feel great.
But it's like another world. And every time I go there and look at that market, I go, holy crap, what's going on here? And some of the technical rules over there are sort of conspired against the ease of simply adding more batteries because you were limited to 5 kilowatt inverters on single phase and so forth. So there's been some real challenges over there. So Warwick, here's my challenge to you. We put you on the spot, but I'd love to see what the take-up rate is like proportionally and representatively to the other states because I can't tell yet whether WA is lagging as a consequence of all the weirdness or whether it is actually doing okay. Because they also, as Jess said, also had a really buoyant battery market before the rebate.
Yeah, and look, you can contrast South Australia with WA. Yeah, WA has a 70 installations of batteries for every 100 installations of PV. So on that measure, they're behind their cousin in South Australia. And part of that, though, is because South Australia's got a very heavily saturated PV market. It has also got a very strong, historically strong battery market as well. So look, I think there is something that is hindering the WA battery market. But what's most surprising at the moment is how far behind Victoria is in all those figures.
So
I'm going to chuck it right out there and say in South Australia, it's not a matter of keeping up with the Joneses. It's about bettering the Joneses next door. And they've already got a battery. So the next door neighbour says, I've got a battery. It's been great. You go, yeah, give it to that guy. I'm going to get a bigger one.
It might be part of it. We get a fair few blackouts as well here. That's a pretty decent motivator for people, is, wanting to have that grid security as well. So, yeah.
But you've had supportive governments too.
Yes.
Successive governments, whichever team they're playing for.
Absolutely. We've just recently had a small business grant for energy electrification, which they're redoing again. I probably should have had that in my news, which is pretty cool. But, the combination of that and the battery scheme makes it very attractive for small businesses as well, which, those are going to be some beefy systems you'd think and hope.
I was going to come back to WA, seeing as though Nigel sunk the boot in. It's a weird place with weird rules, weird people. But also in WA, with our battery scheme coming in, we've spoken about it on previous episodes, but it's just been a complete cluster when it comes to understanding which equipment can be installed, what the process is to claim the local rebate, and all the hoops they have to jump through. So shout out to all those in the WA industry. Really, once again, big shout out to the Smart Energy Council, and particularly Charlie Caruso and the team over here. There's WhatsApp groups. They've been active every day speaking to relevant government departments, regulators, all the relevant people. But I only think if there hadn't have been that intervention, which went on for months, and that high pressure, I think we'd be in a different situation. I'm going to pivot from there. And also some questions without notice, Warwick. So you were a director of the Clean Energy Council for a number of years, and pretty big news that Kane Thornton has moved on. Now, we know that the installer accreditation used to sit with the CEC. It's now with the SAA. The products accreditation went up for tender again, I think it was last year, and it was reconfirmed with the CEC. And they're still operating the NetCC program, which, of course, is a mandatory thing. Certainly over here in WA with the battery scheme as well. I'm curious to see with the CEC, when I look at the organisation now for someone who's been involved with solar installers, retailers, manufacturers, service in that space of the industry, there's not many faces that I recognise anymore out of the old school. And there's been an absence of them on the coalface where we sit in the industry. So no doubt at the policy level, at the big end of town, the financiers, the EPCs, all that large-scale stuff, they're still very much involved in. I haven't actually seen the CEC involved on the coalface for years, I'm going to say it. Kane did do a great job in the space and with the remit that he had. How do you see the CEC moving forward from this point?
I don't know. I really don't. I can see for years that the CEC was doing amazing things behind the scenes, but was having difficulty communicating it. Then I've also seen that there were gaps that they were leaving, which they weren't doing a good job in certain places. Now that Kane left, right now the board is very heavily biased towards large scale. It wasn't always the case. And so I'm just not sure how much attention is going to be provided to small scale moving forward. And so, I think there's still some good people in there. You're right. They're not the same people who were there before, but I really don't know what it looked like. I wish that it was stronger in small scale, and I had lobbied and advocated and tried to push that for many years. As Nigel's involved as well. I still think they're going to be around doing the job that they do and that they've earned the right to continue to do. The other thing, though, I'd like to say is that for many years, the CEC was the best resourced organisation to be able to handle all of that, even if they didn't do it perfectly. And nowadays, I don't think that's the case. I think SEC does an exceptional job, still on a very low budget, and has also earned the right to be a strong voice in this space. Congratulations to them. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the new CEO when they come in.
The concern is that the two key programs to our sector is the NetCC and is the products accreditation. So when you speak around to OEMs at the moment, there's still a lot of angst and a lot of issues around getting products through that process and streamlining it. So when they won the tender to continue operating that program, it was on the premise that they were going to increase resourcing and shorten the length of time. Now, that being said, there's been additional types of compliance that have come in, and now we've got CSIP, and with the battery scheme coming in, we've got so many new entrants to the market. However, there hasn't really been an improvement as far as I understand. And really, as far as I can see, a program like the NetCC would make more sense if the operator was actively involved in that part of the market that they're servicing.
Oh, I like that. That's right.
Zinger.
Right on the zinger. As you know, I was on the approved solar retailer program, the predecessor for the NetCC. I love the idea. And in fact, the idea for the NetCC, just again, I'll say it again for those who have been around long enough to remember, the idea for the very rules that are in the NetCC, stop cringing, Jess. The idea for the
no,
rules
you're talking about me. You can just say me. It's okay.
The idea for the management of retailer behavior to make sure it was in consumers' best interest came from solar installers. Originally through SIA and the CEC, and it took years, and then eventually the CEC got the approved retailer program up, and then eventually the ACCC ratified it, then eventually that became the NetCCC. So the principle is wonderful, but I've been critical of how it's actually able to deliver that in the modern world in the past, and I remain a bit critical of it. Good idea, but not so good on the delivery. But I think you've kind of nailed it there.
And I apologise to you, Warwick, because I didn't want to make it uncomfortable at all. It's just something that's been part of my thoughts and conversations of late. Some good news, though. Data from the Clean Energy Regulator says that there's now been 4.15 million solar PV systems registered as of May 2025. So there's probably an opportunity for that storage to solar ratio to continue quite strong, which is good. What's your big forecast for the year to come? And your best bit of advice to solar retailers and installers?
Well, I think my best bit of advice to you guys is to probably rename your podcast to Just Another Storage Podcast, because I think Australian solar is actually going to be not as important as Australian storage. And actually, I just noted, we were the largest per capita uptake of solar power, but actually the Netherlands has overtaken us now. And we've fallen out of the top 10 globally when you account for all the grid scale going on as well. So my advice is just get good at selling batteries, etc. And as with everything in solar, where you've had to sell solar against people who are just trying to sell the cheapest possible thing, like, okay, well, how can we get good at selling a solution rather than a commodity?
How are your stats going to capture the batteries on wheels, Woracle? How's that going to go?
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
All right, we're going to have to wrap up shortly, so we'll go through and do our last comments, and we'll start with you, Jess.
Sure. So firstly, I want to thank the Smart Energy Council for inviting me to do a little panel talk. I really enjoyed it, and I had some really great feedback from people, met some really awesome people, and thought it was a really, really cool experience to do. I also want to do a massive shout out to Franklin WH. They came and did an introduction to their product for us in our showroom. And I've been through a few of these now, and I thought it was pretty top tier. But most especially, they had amazing merch. I got a little battery pack that I can magnet to my phone. I wish I had it with me so I could demonstrate it, but it was sick merch, and that goes a long way.
Shout out to Ruskin and Mitch, Andrew Mitchell from Franklin.
We're overdue to have them
them
on.
in Adelaide.
We've got to get them on.
We are.
We should.
We have to get them on. Now, I made the same comment to them. I've got that battery pack. I've got the hats.
Sick.
I've got all of their merch is good merch. It doesn't fall apart, in a couple of weeks. It's actually rock solid. Shout out to those guys, and also excellent team.
Yeah,
so,
if you missed the Powerwall too, get yourself some Franklins. But if they make their batteries as well as they make those battery packs, the little phone charger ones, I reckon it's going to be a winner.
And just saying again, Jess, you did really well on the panel. It was informative. You spoke really well. And also the MC for the panel was Matt Wilkins. And I think he's missed his call-in. He's excellent at that. So professional. And we'll go to last comments from you, Nigel.
I've got a few because I've been a little bit quiet today. First, a big shout out to Andy McCarthy. Andy McCarthy was nominated. Yeah, lots of cheers all around. It was an industry advocacy award by the CEC, which is outstanding contribution to the industry, and very, very well deserved. So congratulations to you, Andy. That's awesome. Secondly, I'm just going to shout it out that in case no one knows, we're all in black. And if we're doing video, we're going to need to lift our game. So next week, I'm going to call it right down. I'm going to say Hawaiian shirts next week. Okay. So, well, they don't have Hawaiian shirts in Adelaide, Jess?
Spa attire.
We're going to need to lift the game, though, because it's all black. It's very boring. So we're going to do that. Thirdly, done a bunch of explainer blogs in the last week, actually. One on a simple version for how to understand what's going on in WA, because it's really freaking weird. And secondly, why I highly recommend to solar businesses to join a committee, either an industry reference group or a committee or something, the value of that, what's so critical, and how you can actually influence the future of your business by doing that. And so I put a couple of little explainers out via SEIA in the last week on that, and look forward to the next show, actually, because I'm going to drop a massive 2 bombshells.
Look forward to that one, Nige. Watch that space. Warwick Johnston from Sunwiz, the guru, the Woracle. Thanks again for coming on. I'm sure we'll get you on again in the future to share insights. And what are your last comments?
This afternoon, I was on the Cheaper Home Batteries Implementation Committee, and I was very impressed with Minister Bowen. His observations, his comments show that he's really across all the issues that are happening in program in this industry. And I think he's demonstrated that for quite some time, and he's been very responsive to the engagement of the industry organisations, which are also very much partly responsible for this program that which we're all enjoying. Right? So let's be grateful to the Minister, let's be grateful to the SEC, CEC, etc. that listened and got us here. And the other thing I will say is we'll be hosting a webinar in September. Onto our website, we'll have a link up there for you to register on, where we'll be running a deep dive into all of the battery data. So come along to that.
So that's the Sunwiz Battery Market Initiation.
That's the one.
So you can jump online and register. Well, thanks again for coming on. Thanks, team. And thanks to you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share, and we'll catch you next time.